can start
You
rolling.
want the fire on or not?
No.
Oh, it won't show up, will it?
No, not unless you're cold.
Oh, no, I'm not. Are you warm enough?
No.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay. We're rolling.
Well, I know what Mickey likes you to do first is give your name so that she can keep track of who all these people are.
So go ahead and your name.
Well, I think it was some frost on the pumpkin this morning.
Was there?
It's been cold all day, with no sun to speak of. And,
Yeah. Well, tell her,
Go
tell the
ahead.
camera your
My
name.
my name,
Yeah.
Andrew Fox.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we ready?
Well, we can start off on childhood things, or we can start off any place. We don't have to be confined to that. And you had the years with the band that I'd like to hear you talk about.
The Ole Miss band?
The Ole Miss band.
The University High School band.
Well, okay, both. I remember the beginning of the University High School band when
Yeah.
people were trying to learn to play the instruments, and the whole school resounded with a lot of soured notes.
we had our bushel full of them. Yeah, I taught in the music department. I had at Ole Miss. So I was snookered on that band business. But, when I went to work for Ole Miss, I didn't have anything to do with the band.
Really?
Not directly. Now, as a student in the Ole Miss band, I had written some arrangements for them and all that kind of thing. But I came back and went off to school and majored in composition, music and composition and theory. So that's what my area of expertise was.
Right. So were you involved when you were a faculty member with the Ole Miss marching band at all?
When Jim Ferguson, VP's brother,
Right.
when he was the band director, he was band director for 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote every note they played at the halftime shows.
Is that right?
Yeah. And arranged it. They weren't my compositions, but my arrangements of the music. And then after he left, I did it for another couple of years, and then the next succeeding band director bought stock stuff. And I wasn't willing to do that free.
Yeah,
And
I don't blame you.
And they decided they couldn't afford me anymore. I said, okay, fine.
Go do something else.
Yeah. I had plenty to do.
Yeah, I'm sure. And Jimmy Ferguson lives in Atlanta now, I understand.
DeKalb, Georgia, which is right
that's
outside.
greater Atlanta.
Yeah.
I think our friend Jim Autry maybe keeps up with him to some extent.
Yeah. Who was Mr. DeKalb? There's a DeKalb, Mississippi, DeKalb, Illinois, or Indiana, or somewhere. That's a common name, and the product's called DeKalb or something.
I don't know. I'd have to Google him, and maybe.
Yeah, me too. I never even thought of that. But
yeah, right. I don't know who DeKalb was.
yeah, I don't either. But apparently, prominent person, or
yeah. At that time. Well, when you were in college and in the band, well, Jim Ferguson would have been at the same time also in the band, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And Jim Autry.
Yeah, right. Jim Autry was the drum major.
He told me that, and that marching along, kids would throw rocks at his big hat.
Oh yeah, it makes a great target. the famed Shako, they call that.
Yeah. Well, I think he relied a lot on that band scholarship to help him get through school.
Well, a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And it would waive out-of-state tuition too from other kids.
Oh, really?
And always has, as long as I can remember. Kid come here from out of state, it would waive that, and that's a pretty steep tab too. That out-of-state tuition is.
Well, it is, and I didn't realize that, but that may help explain why we've always had a rather strong big band.
Well, yeah. Well, it comes and goes depending on who the director is and a lot of other things, but And how well is the team doing? You know.
Yeah, all those kinds of things. And I would think too that a director, it has to be somebody pretty vivacious and lively and outgoing to encourage the kids to be the same way.
Either encourage or intimidate, one or the other.
Okay, whatever works.
I just kicked that. Is that that's?
No, I don't think you heard anything. I don't think it matters a whole lot.
Well, Jim Ferguson had a real knack for. He called it rubbing bellies with the kids. You know, dancing with them, and he could control them pretty well.
Yeah. And I'm sure I must have known him, I just don't remember. Now, VP, of course, I do remember.
Oh yeah, everybody remembers VP.
Yeah,
He passed away, incidentally, recently.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but within the last year and a half or 2 years in Paris.
Well, he'd lived there for so long.
Yeah. I understand he was an editor of a magazine of some sort over there in French, a French magazine.
Yeah. He'd written something biographical that I think Will Lewis was taking an interest in getting published, but I don't think anything ever came of that. Now, this is only some years ago that I heard Will mention it.
Somebody who had read his autobiography said it was boring. You know, it wasn't very interesting. Not nearly as colorful as his life was. You know.
Well, that could be the source of how this conversation got started. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was too long ago. But
He was a character, I guess it's fair to say.
well, he was that, and we all, well, we were fascinated with him, I think's the word.
Yeah. I met, with my connection with Jim Ferguson, we were
Right.
classmates. I would go over to Columbus, where they're from, and I met his father, VP Senior,
Okay.
and Vernon Perel, and he was on the faculty at MSCW at that time, they called it, and
Yeah.
taught physics, I think it was. And, we played a job over in somewhere in Alabama, and came back and spent the night at Jim's house.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, Jim, baby boy, come on in here." You know, that's what his daddy said. And he introduced me to him, and he said, "Oh, sure, we'll put him up. Y'all go back there in that bedroom." We went back, and there was an airplane engine sitting there on the floor. You know, that's the craziest situation. So you can see where VP gets his idiosyncrasies. But
Right. Idiosyncrasies is the word for it. Well, I think also he worked at it.
oh yeah. I remember he would go fishing with Mr. Faulkner, and they would go out to Sardis Lake, and he was in on that deal of that boat that Mr. Faulkner built, you know, and on its maiden voyage went to the bottom, if you remember.
Yeah.
And they had a black man there to help him who was, VP had named him Ahab.
Yeah.
And he said Ahab swam out of there
Yeah.
when the thing sank. But
Somebody's written that up because I read a bit of that. There again, it's years ago. I don't remember exactly the details, but in any case, I'd forgotten about all that involvement with Faulkner, but
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
well, of course, my house is just 2 blocks from him down there, and I'd see him walk down to the Gathright Reed's every morning. You know, he'd go down and visit. What's his name? Yeah, Mac Reed. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so he'd pass it there regularly, you know.
Sure.
And he was on a mission. He was not distracted by anything. You know, you could call out his name, and this is never miss a step.
It's true. I have written a little bit about that when I did the Faulkner local panel a few years ago, when I realized it looked like a detached, snobbish behavior, but on the other hand, I think he was off in his own world, and he was taking a fairly strong position to ignore everything else around him and just go where he wanted to go.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, I thought, that's not easy to do, because this little town is geared on doing nothing but frivolous visiting. Most of it doesn't amount to a hill of beans.
Yeah.
Just chitter chatter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he wouldn't do that.
No. No.
And I always stopped to see his mother. His mother,
Oh, yeah.
Faulkner's mother.
I never knew her, I don't think. I knew Estelle, of course, but...
Right. Well, I don't think she hung out much around Roanoke. I think she stayed in that little house on South Lamar that
Right.
he had built for her. And there's a wonderful story. It could have been made up, who knows, but it's still a funny story. When she was getting older and thinking she was dying, and she said, well, now, if I go off to heaven, I wonder if your father is going to be there. And Faulkner said, well, I don't know. She says, well, I don't ever want to see that man again in my life. He said, well, Mama, if you don't want to, you don't have to. I don't know whose story that was.
I think I've told you this story, but Jill, his daughter,
Right.
has the same birth date as I do,
I
on
see.
June 14th.
Mhm.
And they put the flags out for our
Right.
Flag Day. But anyhow, when we was, she's a year older than me, so when she was 9 and I was 8, I think, and we had a birthday party at Roanoke, out in the east of the house, on the yard over there,
Right.
where the little concrete patio or something
Right,
out
the
there.
side yard there.
Yeah. And we had all the birthday cake and ice cream and those funny hats and all the same stuff. And Mr. Faulkner came out just about dusk and started telling us ghost stories, us 8 and 9-year-old kids,
Right.
And I'd give anything if I could remember any one of those stories, and all I can remember was that I was absolutely petrified, just
He scared you to death.
yeah, and the black gal that worked there,
Well, there was so many of them.
yeah, well, at that time, whoever it was, he had gotten her to put a sheet overhead and dash from cedar tree to cedar tree over there in our peripheral vision,
He was having a wonderful time.
Oh, he was. He got kids crying and ducking, never know what was going to happen.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
But I think you loved dealing with kids that way and was
Yeah.
really good at it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think you liked everything about play acting and making stuff up.
Yeah.
And kids, of course, just would buy that hook, line, and sinker.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, that's a grown man telling me this. Can't be anything wrong with it.
I was reading something recently. I don't know, I've got so many files on different things, but it had to do with him and Malcolm when he bought Roanoke, because Estelle was very unhappy. And my mother had told me that. It had no running water, it had no electricity. And Malcolm, as a 6-year-old, didn't even realize it had a house. He just thought they were going to go live out in the woods, which he thought was a splendid idea.
Oh, yeah. Camp out.
He writes about trying to help out as a 6-year-old on the house building, and Faulkner did a lot of the work himself, or contracted with people that helped him, and got it done eventually. But it pretty primitive when they first got out there, and I think Estelle and our oldest child managed to spend a lot of time at her parents' house there on South Lamar, where the phone company is now.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Right, and not have to stay down there in conditions that she didn't much care for.
When Billy Cole comes down here and we want to explain to somebody how to get from point A to point B, he says, well, you turn that Rob Bowles shoe stop,
Which hadn't been there in years.
and hadn't been there in 20 years. Everybody knows where Rob Bowles shoe shop was.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, I guess you never grow up,
Well, you just assume everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. A friend of mine has made such fun of me. He was coming to get me for some class reunion we were going to we've been very close on the Mississippi, and he's lived in New Orleans for years. Trying to give him directions to get from the old Holiday Inn over here to this house. And I'm hollering at the mama, Mama, what's the name of that street? I don't know the name of the
What, this was here?
No, it was
Oh.
9th Street, I think.
Oh, 9th.
I didn't, you know.
Yeah.
And I could tell he was just out of India, but he said, what's the name of the street? Well, I didn't know.
It's Old Highway 6.
Yeah, it's old Highway 6. So, anyway. Well, start in with some earlier memories, too. If you have memories of when your father was on the faculty, whether you did any hanging out around the law school when he was out there.
Who?
Your father.
Oh.
Did you just steer clear?
For the most part, I steered clear. I would walk around the grove there, and I could hear his voice. This is before the days of air conditioning, and all the windows were up,
Right.
open, and I could hear his voice booming out of those windows. And he was fussing at some law student about something, you know. And I was passing right there by the old chancellor's home, you know. And
Right.
and my Beryl says, "Was that your daddy?" My wife.
Yeah.
When we were students together at Ole Miss, and she says, "Is that your daddy up there?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You live with that every day?" Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Farley Hall was the law school at that time. So,
And Robert J. Farley
yeah.
was a godfather of mine. He was my
was he?
godfather. So, and my parents encouraged all of us three boys to call him Uncle Bob. So I may slip up and say Uncle Bob today, and you'll know I'm talking about Bob Farley. And,
Right, I will.
and I had another godfather who was Victor Coulter,
Oh, yeah.
and Vic. They called him Vic Coulter. And so I may slip up and call him by the name that my parents called him, you know. And
Well, that's okay.
yeah, well,
But I didn't know Victor Coulter was godfather to anybody. It's just,
well, apparently he and my dad were good buddies, and I didn't know him all that very well, but
I didn't know Dr. Coulter well at all.
well, they named a building after both of them out there, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
They did. So, he was here for a long time. Well, when you all lived on South 11th Street, you just, like everybody else in town, walked back and forth
Oh yeah, to the campus.
to the campus.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We all did.
And from down here too. You remember I lived at just one house this side of Billy Ross's house.
I
And,
know that your family lived there before they bought the house on South
Right.
11th.
and we bought that house on South 11th on December the 7th, 1941.
Really?
Yeah. And of course the big news was Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And when we got into our new house on that day, my dad said, I want you boys to never forget this date. And I didn't know it's because we would have moved into the new house or what. I didn't realize the significance of the Pearl Harbor event, you know.
Yeah, so your day to move into your new house.
Yeah.
Well, the house where Andrew grew up, I think, is considered one of the oldest still occupied houses in Oxford.
On South 11th?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's been there, I think, 1834. I think it was a date on it. There was a man who owned it, was a jeweler, and he was English.
Mm-hmm.
And he set up a jewelry store here in Oxford, and he had two daughters. And when he passed away, he bequeathed the home to the two daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And then we bought it from them. My dad and mom bought it from them.
Yeah.
So when I was it was built in 1834, and when we bought it in 1941, 110 years later, there had only been 3 occupants.
Think of that.
Yeah. And,
Well, I loved that house, and I don't think it was the house so much as it was the cordiality of your family that made it always so comfortable
well,
to be there. And always full of
well, your mom and my mom were just as close as any two ladies I've known you know.
They really were.
Yeah.
They depended a lot on each other.
Yeah.
And your mother could do things in that house that were amazing because she went blind in her later years.
Oh yeah, diabetes got her.
Yeah. And at one point in those years, Elmer, mother's second husband, had a stroke. And Leela was down here. And Leela was maybe 9 years old. I think Jim and I had gone off on a cruise. Something we didn't do very often, but anyway. Marjorie just had Leela move in with her, and Leela had a wonderful time. And of course didn't realize anything was amiss at all.
I didn't remember. That must have been gone by then.
Well, I'm sure you weren't living here at that time. I mean,
Yeah.
she's born in 63, so this was
Oh yeah, yeah.
about 70, somewhere in the early 70s. That happened.
You may not remember this either, but when I graduated from Ole Miss, I went up to school in Southern Illinois, at Carbondale, Illinois, and got my degree in music composition. And the whole world was not knocking at my door wanting me to come teach at their university, you know. So I took a job as a high school band director, and taught down at Morton, and then Vicksburg for a couple of years, and then I went over to Mississippi State. And my dad referred to me as his missionary son, teaching at Mississippi State.
In Mississippi State,
Yeah.
out among the heathens.
That's right.
I don't think people pay quite as much mind to that as they once did. At least that's my impression. Well, tell me also about the years at University High School when that band was just getting started, because as I said, I can still hear the squeaks and the squawks of people trying to
Oh yeah.
find their way.
Well, I remember when I was in 6th grade at the Oxford Grammar School, over on, across from what's now the Oxford Eagle.
Right.
The Ole Miss band director came out and demonstrated the various band instruments, and had a young band director, high school band director named Robert Work, Bob Work, or Robert Work, and he demonstrated the various instruments and all that, and just tried to get the kids interested in joining the band. And so I was interested, and I went home and told my dad I wanted to be in the band, my parents, and that I wanted to be in the band, and that I wanted to play the trombone. I said, because when he demonstrated, he says, "Now I'll show you how you swallow the slide," and you pull this thing out here, and he pulled it in. He thought it went all the way down. So, I want to do that, you know. And anyway, my dad said, "No, I've got an old cornet. You gonna play that?" I said, "Oh." Well, all right, no. He didn't ask me if I wanted to. He never did ask me anything like that. But one of his clients, when he was practicing law, one of his clients couldn't pay their fee, but he said, "But I'll give you this cornet," bartered with him to pay his legal fee, and he said, "Well, okay." And it was a horrible instrument. It made in Chicago, had holes all in it and just dents, and terrible instrument. But that's what I played, and I played
Did you?
Yes, ma'am. Got in Mr. Work's band, and nobody could play that instrument well, you know. Well, somehow or other, after 2 or 3 years, Mr. Work scraped up a better instrument for me, which was also a used one, but I don't care, you know. And he made by, it's called a King Instruments, and a cornet. And I began to make lots of progress, and ended up being in the all-state band 2 years in a row. And Mr. Work saved my neck that time, but and then after that, I came on high school here at Ole Miss, and I got the serious professional trumpet to play, and began to. But still, I changed my major from being an instrumental to theory and composition, and so performing was not my main thing. But although I did perform a lot, but when I was on the faculty out here, I played in the faculty brass quintet. And,
Yeah.
so
It seems to me every time I would come home to Oxford for some kind of function, you were always playing in the band, whatever the band included. It
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
and Chester McClarty sometimes,
yeah, and Tommy Etheridge.
and Tommy, yeah.
And did you know Warren LaRue?
I don't think I did.
He was a contemporary of Tommy in Chester, and he went to Ole Miss about 1935 and played in the Mississippians, the dance band.
Well, I may have known him and not
Yeah.
known that I knew.
And he was their singer and saxophone player. And then he's passed away now, but he was living out at the veterans home. He had served in World War II. And
I probably read his obituary.
speaking of that, Sleepy Yerby, E.F. Yerby, there's another building named for him out there. We're not filming, are we?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we are.
Are we?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well,
That's
anyway.
fine. This is just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is the way I want it. I remember Sleepy quite well.
Okay, well, I went over to Sleepy's house here in Oxford.
Yeah.
And he took me back to his music room where he had all his stereo and his clarinet and saxophones. And I noticed, looked on the wall, I saw a picture of downtown London on VE Day. And of course, the whole place was just covered with people dancing and singing. We finally won World War II, the European version of it. And Sleepy was standing up on a hotel balcony with his saxophone.
Oh, really?
And he was giving everybody a party, you know.
Yeah.
The American jazz was very popular in England. But
Oh, it was indeed. It continues to be a major influence.
yeah. And I thought he said, oh yeah, war was hell.
You're right.
Played his way through on saxophone. But
Well, that band had roots clear back into that 30s period and perhaps earlier that I don't know about. But the one year we lived in the house in the center of the campus, A.G. Bowen came with the house, right next door to what was in the music hall.
yeah.
And he would play with the orchestras too, and frequently they'd get as far as our house, and then nobody felt like going any further. Mother never knew who all would be asleep on the floor. It was a big double living room, big hauled house. And we were a congregating spot for those musicians years ago
Yeah.
when I was too little to much appreciate it.
He was a good musician. A.G. was, yeah. As a matter of fact, I succeeded him. He was the music theory composition teacher before me.
I see.
And then he retired, and then I took his job there. But,
Yeah.
so but I had already known him, you know.
Oh, sure.
And it's a lot of things in this life you just fall into by sheer luck. You
It's
know.
true.
Yeah.
It's true. And you feel, well, you never know what's going to set the course. And you look back and say, well, that's the way
Yeah.
it went.
Yep.
And well, did he go on into some administrative work on campus?
Me?
Yerby.
Oh, yes. He had an office over in the old alumni house. What they call it something else now, but you know where I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I know exactly where you're talking about.
And what was it? He would go out and be a glad hander for the university, you know, trying to recruit people to come to the university. If they had one particular person in mind they thought was be an excellent student, or he would speak to political people around, you know, and everybody I ever knew who Sleepy Yerby was. I mean, he was just well known everywhere.
Yeah, he was.
And
well, and he was charming, and he had the gift of gab and everything he needed
yeah,
to work with.
yeah, and talented. Musically, really talented too.
Yeah, yeah.
I am proud to say I own his clarinet.
Oh, do you?
He had given it to Tommy Etheridge,
Uh-huh.
and Tommy said, "I'm gonna give that to you, and I want you to have my clarinet." So I've got Tommy's and Sleepy's clarinet, and I'm so proud to have those. I want to put them in a display case somewhere, you know.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
Do you ever play either one of them?
Me?
Uh-huh.
No.
Well,
I can play the clarinet if you let me hide somewhere. I'll play the clarinet a little bit, but not in front of people. I wouldn't want to play.
You didn't ever go back to the trombone.
I finally learned how to play one. Trumpet is my basic instrument, but being a high school band director, I tried to stay one page ahead of the kids
Right.
in the books, and so I'd learned to play all the various. I played trombone, saxophone, clarinet a little bit, and to demonstrate to them what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
And don't give me anything complicated to play, but just how to get a nice tone on it and all that sort of stuff.
Right. My father played the trombone, and I don't have any idea where he learned or how he got started, but I just remembered he played in the Yale marching band
Is that so?
when he was in graduate school at Yale, and we had that trombone for years.
I don't remember now Harvard, I know, has no music school where you learn to play an instrument. They'll study the history of it and the
Yeah.
theory behind it and all the academic aspects of music, but we don't lower ourselves to actually play any music
Yeah, right.
or sing any music.
We hire people to do that.
That's right. And so, and what's the famous Harvard Glee Club?
Well, that's the men's glee club, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Well, of course, in the old days, that's all there were, men.
Right. And
But-
they were really quite good.
Oh, sure. They were world famous.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about Yale may have been similar situation where there were only men in the early days.
Right.
And they've had a hasty pudding club. Where
Well, yeah, that was a social club.
is that Yale?
That was Yale.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard my dad speak of that. He went to school at Yale for. He went to Harvard and didn't like it, and he transferred and went to Yale.
I see. Well, Daddy was there for advanced scientific work, so it didn't have anything to do with music. So he had taken that up somewhere else and just did it, I guess, as a
Yeah.
extracurricular something that he was interested in.
Well, at Harvard, they don't have any music faculty to teach you how to play an instrument or
Yeah.
conduct an orchestra or a band. Anything that, if you do it, you're on your own. And he probably might have taught himself to play trombone.
Well, he might have done.
Just learn to play it by the seat of your pants, like a lot of things I do.
Right. Or he could have taken it up when he was still undergraduate at Clinton. I don't know.
Yeah.
Possible entirely, but not sure about that. But anyway, it's well, go back and come up with any other memories of things on campus that don't necessarily have to do with your musical career, just things that you may remember from boyhood days.
Yeah. Well, to me, the ultimate luxury
Mm-hmm.
was my parents would have me mow the lawn. And we had a big lawn in the backyard, and it was just
It went clear through the South Mall.
yeah, it was a whole block long, and it was just insufferably hot and just dying. Okay, when you get through, you can go out to the university, go swimming in the pool, and so I would walk out to the university. Eventually, I got a bicycle, and I could ride my bicycle out there, but and get into that pool, and that was the greatest thing, being just burning up and get cooled off. And if they had put just fresh water in the pool, it was ice cold. And that was more than I could stand. I wouldn't be in there 4 seconds before I was out of it. But usually after it'd been in there 2 or 3 days and the sun warmed up the water a little bit, you could stand it more easily. But I used to really, and I like to dive. They had nice diving boards.
They did.
I don't know if anybody now would remember where the pool was, but
Well, I do.
oh, I know you do. But
Well, I mean, most of us children learn to swim in that.
yeah. Well, what did they call the old gym when nowadays? What do they call that building? It used to be
It's Martindale Hall.
Martindale. That's what it is. Yeah.
But I don't remember we ever used to call it anything other than the gym.
No, that's all I ever called it. But anyway, just west of that was where the pool was, and
Yeah.
that's where you had cyclone fence around it, and you. Being a faculty son, I could get in with no cost.
Right.
And the regular, ordinary Oxford citizens had a fee you paid. It wasn't much, I don't
I
think.
think it was a dime. for
Was
one
it the
something
dime?
like that.
Yes. Anyway, then they had dressing rooms. You can go in and get your bathing suit on and
Right.
swimming suit. And I got to be a pretty fair diver, and even to the point of being in the competitions. get on the high dive and do all sorts of swan and I don't even remember now what they call the various kinds of
They
dives.
all had names, didn't they?
Yeah. And I remember one day though, I was out there, I'd dived off the high board, and just as I was coming up, there was a little junior high girl who was going to jump off of that high board right after that, and she jumped right on top of my head. And I had to have 2 stitches in it. She had to have stitches in her neck, her chin at the top of my head. And somebody, I was worried about the little girl. I don't know if she fainted or what, but I saw some blood, and the guy says, "That's your blood," and I didn't even know that. I just thought I'd been hit with a big stick or something, but I had a couple.
She must have jumped off without looking or paying any attention.
No, just as far as she was concerned, once I got underwater, I just disappeared. There wasn't. But I worked my way back up. But that was a memorable event. But there were a whole bunch of us boys would go out into the pool and get cooled off in the summertime.
And a lot of playing in the grove too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Never mind, Lila got that. Somehow, well, I don't know when what's the name's going to get here, but we'll just continue on with.
My phone off.
Turn your phone off too.
Are we taking 5?
If you need to.
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I don't know that we need to. Well, I don't know how much. I just know our family spent a lot of time together over the years. And I know my father kept diary notes, mother did too. Not all the time, just off and on as they thought of it. But I came across a note, must have been about 1940. They didn't seem to take any notice of New Year's and New Year's Eve. Daddy's note just said, "The Foxes and the boys were out to visit this evening." That was either New Year's Eve the night before.
I did not know that.
Well, you wouldn't remember it.
No.
I mean, we were little. And
Yeah.
I'm sure Johnny was too big to be a part of it.
Now, what age is Jan?
You're all the same age.
I thought he was
in
at-
1935.
Okay, I thought he was in my class, but
Yeah,
and I remember coming out to your house when you're out there by the old Chancellor's home, and
yeah, right.
he'd always had interesting something he was doing, but
And he was always into something, and he and Daddy did a lot together too.
yeah.
Because there was a lot to do to keep up that big place.
Well,
And Daddy wanted it, so he had to deal with it.
well, in class, Jan was thought of as he's one of those brainy kids.
Yeah, right.
He'd tell his daddy'd been working on him a little bit. But
Yeah. Well, you all both went away for those last 2 years.
yeah,
I know you went to Sewanee.
yeah, I didn't know he did. What
You went to Columbia.
in Tennessee?
Yeah.
Well, heck, I didn't know that.
Well, the connection was somebody that I had dated years before that recommended their admissions people come and see us. And that's how we got hooked up with them. And Ray certainly was no discipline problem or no scholastic problem either. He just needed to be someplace that offered more of a challenge. And you
Yeah.
did too, I expect.
Well, that's a long story.
Well, that's all right. You go ahead and tell it. We've got
Well, my dad teaching in the law school,
Yeah.
and my oldest brother, John the Third, got a law degree, and then my brother, Clifford, the middle boy, went to law school. And I decided, no, I'm going to go to music school. And I was just the black sheep of the family. Everybody's going, who is anybody, goes to law school.
I'm sure your father looked with askance.
He did. Music. I said, yeah, I want to be a music teacher just like Mr. Work, my high school band director. I admired him a lot, and he was a talented and industrious and good teacher. And my dad said, my God, Andrew, you want to be a musician, they don't make any money, and you want to be a school teacher, and they don't make any money, and you want to be both of them? I said, yeah, that's what it was. And my mother said, now, John, you know, and that settled it. I was able to go ahead and major in music, and so that, but I think when I was in the 10th grade, I was beginning to have some progress and making progress as a musician.
Right.
And it was clear I had interests in that direction.
Right.
And not in the legal world. And so my dad said, okay, you're going to go to Sewanee Military Academy. And Mr. David Hughes, who had a hardware store, Hughes Hardware on the square, right next to.
Hey, come on in.
Hey.
This looks happy.
Yeah.
That's happy.
Oh, hey, gal.
Andrew, you're all dressed up. Know where my warmest bag is?
Well,
You look good.
well, you better get your camera. This is as pretty as I get right here. But,
And there's
Hey, how are you?
Mikey. Haven't seen you in
I
so
know. How
long.
have you been?
I've been fine.
Make yourself comfortable. And
I am. I brought one little thing I jotted down, scribbled down, because a memory is a terrible thing to lose.
I'm worried about what I'm going to be able to say all day. I can't think of anybody.
You know, my friends call me and say, now who did we double date with in 1950 something? And I go, oh, you know, that was blah, 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 blah. And then I walk in my kitchen and think, what am I doing in here? In my own kitchen.
well, we're going to get you to